right, sweet. All right, so as I said, I'll just introduce you guys, ask some questions. I've only got 8 or 9 questions. Shouldn't be too in depth. Yeah, we should be fine.
Perfect.
Alrighty, thank you so much, guys, for listening to today's video. We have Michelle Reynolds, who's the Executive Director and CFO of H2X, and Brendan Norman, the Managing Director and the CEO. Thank you so much for taking the time, guys. I know you guys are very busy.
No worries.
Yeah, pleasure.
I guess the much-awaited Warrego is finally being released. I know a lot of clients and investors have been eagerly waiting. I guess now that it's been released, what's the next steps for the vehicle and certification?
Yeah, so at the moment, we're going through the process of launching certification first for European markets. The European market can then be used for most of the world in terms of releasing the vehicle, including Australia and the Southeast Asian markets that we've got. And also the key for that is we have got a lot of interest or a lot of purchase interest that's come from particularly the Netherlands. Netherlands does have an extreme subsidy on these sort of vehicles, so we can put the car in a very competitive price situation. And we should be able to deliver quite a lot of units up there, which is obviously interesting, which is why we've sort of got to focus towards the Netherlands market and making sure that it's first registered in that market. Australia is obviously interesting for us and we will produce it there, but of course the production of hydrogen is still delayed to some extent in being able to refuel the car. So the focus on the European market's key for us because of course we've got many more customers can access the vehicle right away and we'll be able to start delivering cars quickly. So that means that the car will be starting to deliver to customers in the first half of next year, which is when we see the first customers able to really access Yeah, we've had a lot of interest from a lot of customers with different aspects. Some of the people were very interested in the fact that it's a 4-wheel drive because it's the only 4-wheel drive hydrogen vehicle that's available. So we did have a number of people who want to explore that. The problem that they're going to have is finding hydrogen at the moment, particularly when you look at Australia, because the private availability of hydrogen is limited. So there we've got a delay. We see the first hydrogen opening in about the end of the second half of next year, and that's when we'll sort of start to, or the end of the first half of next year. So we'll delay those Australian vehicles to some extent. Netherlands, we have 6 stations which are currently open to the public. So we will be pushing the vehicles in the Netherlands, of course. So we'll focus on those customers. We have a number of large orders, and that's anywhere between 20 and 40 vehicles with different state authorities in Netherlands. So we'll really push those ones out earlier. The vehicle's a little bit expensive for us to produce at the moment because we have to pull apart the existing Ford Ranger and then put in our powertrain. So there is that element there. And so in some cases where we've had a lot of interest from customers, and we're well over 600 different customers with, looking for 5, 10, 30, 40 vehicles within each of those customers. There's a lot more than you'd mentioned in terms of the interest. We are pushing them towards the Darling van, which is obviously interesting to a number of people as well. They needed a vehicle that would work. And the Darling's looking at coming out at the end of 2024, which gives us the opportunity to perhaps position a vehicle which is maybe better suited to them, and certainly better suited in terms of the way that hydrogen will be rolled out across the different markets around the world.
So just on the Darling, because I really wanted to delve into this, obviously because it is a taxi per se vehicle, and around the Paris Agreement where legislation's changing on, I guess, zero emission vehicles in major cities. How much of an opportunity does the Darling present for H2X?
Yeah, Darling's a really exciting one for us, Dave. At the moment, the way that it works, the Darling is a vehicle which has got a delivery van application, and it's always also got the taxi application. The opportunity that we have with that vehicle then is to hit those markets. What's really exciting for us in 2025, there's 35 cities, and they're large cities across Europe, which will ban the application of petrol and diesel vehicles. So what it means is that we'll have access to those markets. There are some electric vehicles that have been positioned, The electric vehicles won't run for more than 5 to 6 hours without having to be recharged. The recharging infrastructure required for each of those operators, they'll need to recharge those vehicles for a long period of time. That's upwards of 8 hours for recharging, and they'll need huge infrastructure to do that. So for an Amazon or a DHL or these companies, or the taxi companies, to be able to refuel those vehicles and to keep the drivers on the road for a long period, they're going to need replacement vehicles, which is a disaster for nearly all of the operators. With us, we can refuel in 3 minutes. Had a couple of MOUs that are in place for distribution. We've got 2 4,000 vehicle applications already, which are both in cities in northern part of Europe. So we've got really good application, and that's before we've really done a lot to really market the product. So we've got a really strong application there, mainly because of those cities that are closing off access to petrol and diesel vehicles.
Yeah, fantastic. And I note that you're currently in India, so I kind of wanted to talk around the genset side of the business and the potential Advic high-tech contract that you potentially have with them in India. What kind of business does that also represent for the H2X in such a huge market in India?
Yeah, Advic is one of the strongest tier 1 suppliers in the automotive industry. They're growing very quickly. They're a $100 billion company already, $100 million company already. They're obviously they've got a long support in the motorcycle activity, but they've also got now a number of heavy supply contracts with the automotive makers as well. They've got a very good reputation for delivery and getting things done, which is why we like them. They've got a very good approach in terms of quality and so on. And what we're doing with them is they'll be producing particularly the boxes and the fitment of the gensets. We've worked through the contract, which will go live. We will sign that contract at the start of November. We'll be starting the contract, which will enable us to then sort of proceed from there. And what that'll give us is the ability not only to produce those gensets, they'll support us with finding the right sort of supply chain that we need to give us a balanced supply chain around the world for different parts that we need to put into the vehicle. But also it gives us access to having their contacts and their partners. They're working with a lot of the big automotive industries, and this gives us the chance to also connect to a couple of bus and truck makers to start to launch a couple of bus and truck vehicles where we can start to put vehicles on the road in the short term before the Darling's ready. And this, we're looking at about 5 or 6 different bus opportunities that we've got here in India. And then there's a number of truck opportunities that we can also pursue, because of course we have that experience in China with the team that we've got, having delivered a number of vehicles already in China. There's about 2,500 vehicles that we've delivered. And that gives us the opportunity to really sort of build on that and deliver a lot more customer vehicles in India as we build up to the release of the Darling.
So yeah, just around that too, at the buses and the garbage trucks, I guess, what other new products that are potentially in the pipeline and or contracts around the other parts of the world, you know, more in Asia or potentially in Africa or Europe, there's already many in Europe at the moment.
Yeah, we've got some focused products. We've got the Swedish product. We've got a customer discussion, which is based on a 700 unit application of garbage trucks with one of the partners. We've got the initial MOUs for that, and we're working towards the first rollouts of vehicles coming early in the first part of next year. We're using their facility, the facility that we've got in Sweden is coming from the partner that's there already, which is quite exciting because obviously they're a big part of us doing what we're doing there. And as I said, that's a very big activity. We've also got in Vietnam a MOU, which will be becoming a joint venture agreement in about a month from now. We're signing the contract together with the Prime Minister of the country as well. It's quite a big deal. And that'll be to launch 245 buses, which will be the starting point of a very large investment that they're planning on making. They intend to produce the Darling vehicle in the country on their own funding, which is a very exciting sort of opportunity for us as well. Obviously, we have the work going on in Malaysia, where we have different bus and other activities that we've got there. We are looking at the supplying the motors to the the light rail network that's going in there, which is a 300 kilowatt unit that will go onto those vehicles, which is obviously very exciting. And then there are a number of other customer discussions that we have around the world. There's a large bus contract that we're looking at starting by the end of this year in South Africa. There's about 5 or 6 other markets in Europe that we're looking at going live with. And then there's a number of other activities, including some activities in Australia, which will start to become formalized over the next 2 months. So there's an awful lot happening at the moment.
I guess, around that, with so much demand, I guess H2X is going to need to raise, a substantial amount of cash. I'm still wondering whether or not Europe is still the focus potentially for IO next year.
Michelle, did you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I guess with that, with the launch of IPO, yes, Europe is still the focus. However, we're not closing off any opportunities that we're seeing. The reason for Europe is they're a much more mature market when it comes to renewable energies. So, for example, as Brendan stated, they've got a lot more access to hydrogen at the moment, and we're finding that the market is actually responding a lot better when you get into the renewable source. However, with that, we are looking at IPOing next year. That is still the focus. And it's very much driven by the board and us delivering the Darling. And if we can get the Darling up and running, obviously we'll get a much better price when we go to the IPO process. The idea is we'll probably do another IPO raise before a pre-IPO raise before we do that. That will really accelerate the current projects that we've got on foot.
And just on that, I mean, I guess there was a T2 raise first quarter this year at the 20% level. I mean, now that things have materialized and really advanced in the business, is it fair to say that the business has doubled in that market valuation, considering now the prototype's available, gen sets are up and running? What can you say about that?
Correct. I think the valuation of the company will double in the next pre-IPO raise, if not increase a little bit beyond that. That's what the indication we're seeing at the moment. Obviously, the market will dictate everything coming through, and we're seeing promising results coming through from the investors. I was just recently in the UK and catching up with a few big brokerages there as well, and they're seeing that our last raise price will definitely increase, if not double.
Okay, fantastic. And I guess more of a broader question, just I guess where we see the business in 12 months' time, how things look to be going potentially beyond 2023.
Since we've released a lot of the information, particularly with the gensets, which was the first information that was released 2 weeks ago, we've had contacts from pretty much every country in the world. We had contacts from Syria yesterday, for example, probably the last country I was expecting somewhere from, but we've had really a lot of anticipation around the world for different sort of applications. We see that when we launch the Warrego, we're going to get a number of different sort of people coming to us. And that also is going to be part of us launching the process towards the Darling. We'll be showing the Darling demonstration car towards the end of the towards the end of the first half of next year. And what that'll do is that'll start to build that awareness, the fact that we can manage a vehicle which can be four-wheel drive as well, which is important because it's the only one that is, but be able to have a vehicle which is versatile and then able to do a number of different activities. And we'll be able to push that one. So that'll be very strong. But the other thing, of course, that we've got is the launch of the first vehicles that will come out of Malaysia and Vietnam, which is both in the first quarter of next year with the buses. That'll then give us more leverage to sort of work on the buses. As I mentioned, the team has delivered thousands of buses already in China for a couple of different manufacturers there. So we do have a lot of experience with getting the powertrain right. So we're very confident with delivering those vehicles. And once people see them, we'll then be able to really sort of focus on pushing those vehicles. And that'll help us generate more funds in the short term with operating revenues on those converted type vehicles in the short term. Because of course, in the long term, the idea of us converting vehicles will start to become less of an important factor as, you know, more of the OEMs start to jump on board, which we're expecting by 2027, 2028. So our focus is really getting ready for the Darling and making that important. But we are seeing a lot of activity now with people coming to us with all sorts of different queries. And as we see, particularly the genset, we have had a lot of application for that, but we're getting some customers wanting 50 units, some wanting 100 and so on. So they're very big clients willing to come through on that, which does give us a really good opportunity to start growing the business in an aggressive way.
That's fantastic. I guess all of our investors have been following this process from, you know, early stages, and we're all very excited for what's happening in the hydrogen sector, and obviously H2X in particular. So I really do appreciate you guys both taking the time today to have a chat with us, and I really look forward to seeing what happens in the next 6 months.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Dave. We're very glad for the support that we've had so far. But the thing that's really interesting is obviously we set out to do the business in Australia, and the Australian development of hydrogen is moving at the pace that it's moving at, which is not really having the application yet. But we've been able to find the right markets where there is application going on. Vietnam has really accelerated in terms of delivery of hydrogen with a couple of partners there that we're tied in with. Sarawak in Malaysia has already got the hydrogen available. And then there's the other markets. We're working with the Koreans as well on a launch program for Darling, for example, and they're very excited about supporting that, even with government support. So there's a lot of applications around the world, which has given us a lot of surprises, which sort of keeps us a very global business, which is good. And it gives us a lot of opportunity to make the most of the international team that we have.
Well, we're very happy that you guys are busy. So we really appreciate your hard work, the hard work you guys are doing, and can't wait to see what prevails and updates come in the next couple of weeks to months. It's really been enjoyable to follow the story.
Perfect. Thanks, Dave.
Excellent.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.